Hi, I'm Matt Wyman, CEO and co-founder of Acario. Acario provides agent simulation. We simulate users breaking your agents before your customers do. Joining me for the conversation today is Bobby Gilbert, CEO and founder of OnboardFi. Bobby, welcome. Perhaps you can tell us a bit about OnboardFi and what you're up to.
Thanks, Matt. Really excited to be here and chat with you. OnboardFi is AI-powered customer relationship portals. We provide enterprise customers with AI-powered portals to help their customers navigate sales demo to implementation to ongoing success.
Interesting. Um, how are you actually presenting that? How does the user experience it?
So the end user is our customer's user, and they will interface with a portal, and that portal will adapt to their journey throughout the vendor's experience. So the first time they'll see the portal is usually where the sales demos happen. So we'll give them this portal where they can interact with AI agents in addition to human sales reps. We think that piece is very important. And that portal will house documents, conversations, and then over time, as the relationship develops, key insights are being gleaned for the sales team, the customer success team, and the implementation team.
Huh. So you're really kind of putting in this layer between the business and their customers so they can start to manage. And then the onboard, I mean, given your name, right? This
Mhm.
is also about building a relationship with that particular user. You mentioned you have like a history of conversations. Does that suggest that you're and like what's the interaction model that you're following? Is this mostly just presentation of data and just presentation of different artifacts that have already been made, or is it something different than that?
It's a bit of what you just mentioned. So artifacts, documents, PDFs, any sort of material that would help the sales team. But the sales team will be assisted with AI voice agents that will assist the customer through that particular stage. So if it's a prospecting stage, the customer will go to the portal, and if they can't book a call immediately with the sales rep, they can talk to an AI agent, and that AI agent can help them navigate the demo or any sort of questions that they may have. They can also talk to a human through that portal. And in addition to that, once the purchase has been made, they can continue to conversate with AI agents at the success stage as well. So all of the insights are being gleaned from each stage of the journey so that teams can pass off data to the corresponding team. So from professional service to customer success, from sales to professional services.
That's interesting. I mean, as I'm talking to folks, more and more people, I mean, with Acario, we do a lot of simulation evaluations. We bump into a lot of organizations, and
Mhm.
voice is becoming this new
It is.
interface. I mean, it's not new. We all talk to each other. It's not that new. But in terms of user experience, like when I think user experience, I typically think images. I think apps. I think, design, which is visual. But more and more, it's if you say agent, I mean, we're getting to the point now when I hear agent and it's customer, consumer facing. I know that there's a voice either already there or coming right behind it. And I'm
Yes.
really curious how, I mean, as sort of this new wave of user experience that you're leaning into, how are you thinking about the actual user experience when it comes to voice?
I truly believe that's the hill that we need to die on as it relates to this new user interface. I believe real-time voice will evolve from an experiment to the expectation. I think that it's no longer an accessory, it's going to be the new keyboard. And organizations will shift from asking, can we add voice, to thinking about evaluations to lower their latency. I think that voice is going to really help folks, help customers in the sense of being more inclusive. So now that you can support multi languages, you can support
Mm,
different use cases around non-technical people, and so yeah, it's also going to help where folks aren't necessarily able to be in front of a computer. And so voice is the next paradigm shift when it comes to software interface. In conjunction to voice, we need these systems to be better at latency, being able to take turns, prioritization, being able to do a human in the loop handoff. So those are some of the technical challenges, but those will be cleared very soon. I suspect we see the space moving very rapidly, and competing between Google and OpenAI as the top two leaders in real-time voice.
I mean, it's fascinating and amazing. The technology side's moving really quickly, which is great, but it's a little bit like color depth in design.
Hmm.
I don't necessarily need more colors. What I need to do is understand how to use the tools that I have effectively. And we're seeing voice showing up all over the place, right? So even Apple now has real-time translation with AirPods, which is a type of, hey, they're thinking about voice and a voice problem. I'm curious how you're thinking about some of the types of problems from a user experience standpoint that show up in voice. For example, just as I did a moment ago, speaking very quickly, I can slow down, I can speed up. There are cultural differences with people stepping on top of each other or interrupting. The other that we often see is double questions. Humans are not very good at taking turns. They grab the baton and they go for a while. So how are you thinking about like literally the experience you want to create with the user versus the technology to generate it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because of all of those sort of barriers that you mentioned, we are focusing only on voice, with very little innovation around voice with video. I've seen other startups in our space do an agentic avatar, human-like avatar to use in conjunction with voice. And because of that, you have to make trade-offs. So we
Yeah.
focus only on voice and with function calling as well, to overcome some of those challenging factors. But we don't think voice is just going to make software easier to use. We think it's going to make it more human, and that's the point of this. We want customers to feel like they're talking to someone on their team, someone on the vendor's team, and if they absolutely have to talk to a human, we also support the hybrid model of having a human being able to access the portal as well. Because we're selling to larger customers, there's no really our go-to-market is focused on folks that have higher ACV. I've
Hmm.
seen competitors in the space offer like AI voice demos for sales and AI voice customer success, but that's more so product-led go-to-market motions. We're focused more upstream. And so because of that, I think a hybrid model also will solve those problems. So if you're using Onboard Fi, you can think of these AI agents, these voice agents, as a teammate to assist you in your effort to give the customer the best experience.
Interesting. I mean, you are literally in that case the voice of the company to to the customer. And I'm sure, there's all sorts of nuance in there, but I'm curious, how do you deal with some of the reticence that your customers might have in putting this voice forward as their voice? And it's more than just the physical voice, right? It's also behavior and interaction model and whatnot. How do you address some of that reticence?
Yeah, it's a real challenge. And I don't think necessarily the challenge is technical. I think the challenge is going to be on the human side. Um, the adoption is going to be more so from a behavioral change. Um, so when you're selling this, not just my organization, but other companies as well, when they're selling this new innovation in voice technology, they're going to struggle because humans are just going to be stuck in their kind of ways, and there for every early adopter there's 100 other steadfast folks that you still have to sell to. If it's great if you're in the valley, you can sell to other YC startups, but at some point you got to expand, especially if you're moving upstream. And so there's a lot of adoption friction, where folks have a lot of pushback. And so the best way I've seen to overcome that is to build trust through transparency and showing
Hmm.
folks, educating the customer on how all this works, and really just meeting them where they are, and really not trying to sell the tool or the tech, but sell the change management of it all. You're no longer trying to sell software. You're selling a new way of working, if you will.
That actually almost goes too far for me, and I'm wondering maybe you can help me understand because it's a new way of working, yes, but they're really you're still in the space of work that people there were people doing this work, so they have some proxy for what it is. It's not like a completely new category. um I mean that what's new is to trust this digital employee, if you will, this AI employee to go do this work for you, or this assistant to do this work for you. Maybe the AI employee goes too far, but to trust that entity to go have these conversations and report back the relevant details. And I think quite often people want to force a human in the loop or force visibility as opposed to just trusting that it's working. And I think there's a journey there, where it starts off with human in the loop and people experience it. They go through a few times, and as they start to gain like confidence that it's working, they move to the point of trust that actually those conversations will work the way they expect them to work. And then my observation is after trust comes laziness. So the problem after the trust is they start trusting it and they stop checking it. It's like, no, that doesn't work either. You do need to continually check, but you have to find the right balance. How have you helped organizations as they're on this journey going from magic thinking to, oh, this actually works. Oh, it's representing us through that journey to trust and potentially beyond. How do
Yeah,
you
that's a
help them
great
with that
question.
journey?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really starts off with getting them to see that this non-deterministic system can deliver results, maybe unpredictably in some cases, but um, results that you can try that you can build confidence in over time. So
Mm-hmm.
what we're trying to overcome is this thinking of like computers and software are 100% predictable and deterministic, and that is the piece that we're trying to overcome right now. And for example, to give you an example of a feature that we've developed and shipped very recently. So I mentioned at the top of the call, give vendors a portal for their customers to talk to, right? Talk to the AI agents, but we're also the actual platform that our vendors use to create the portal is actually voice enabled as well. So the
Hmm.
sales team would talk to our system and say, "Hey, I just spoke to Jake from
Love it.
Acme. I need you to create a customer portal for him, create a customer project portal for him, and link him to the CRM." The system needs to be able to handle that ambiguity because there's a lot of details that we're missing, and use non-deterministic reasoning to solve for the nuance, right? And the end user, it's a magical experience when you get the result that you want from a vague prompt like that.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of work and a lot of trial and error, because you could get it to respond the way you want the first time, but after the 100th time, like you said, folks get lazy, and then you don't get the response that you want. Now all of a sudden you lose trust in the tool. So it's a very slippery slope, and we're certainly working to climb that now.
Kind of washing back and forth across it, right? Confidence increases, then maybe it decreases. Well, and then also systems themselves keep changing. So even we, as people providing these products, we'll see sometimes other products shift in how they operate. You're describing a product that's very much oriented towards what I think of as stakeholder, like technically minded people, but maybe not, in fact, likely not engineers, developers, or anything like that. These are folks in the business, right? And their orientation is, and I think this is a good thing by and large, the orientation is show me it works.
Yes.
And once they see that it works, then they want to align that to great. Now, what about pricing? What about packaging? What about buying? Can you connect the dots from show me it works and I understand its value prop? Because a lot of AI right now, a lot of agents right now are being sold in these wackadoodle models of nuances that business folks, I mean, shouldn't even have to worry about. So how are you bridging that gap?
Well, in terms of pricing, we tried to innovate there in the beginning with some of our pilots, and we tried to charge based on tokens. We tried to track every single input and output token, and we found that especially from a voice mechanic, that tended to be very unpredictable and it can be gamed. For example,
Hmm.
based on how robust you're speaking, you could end up being charged more than someone who's more straightforward. And so now you're penalizing someone for being thorough, which will lead to adverse outcomes. So what we've decided to do, not only that, but our like you said, we're selling into the enterprise folks that aren't technical. They don't know what compute tokens mean. They just want to sell to their customers, and they want their customers to be happy. So when we're selling to those organizations, we don't want to innovate. We want to say, hey, look, here's your standard enterprise SaaS pricing package, and here's this component for usage. You'll see a little progress bar go up. Depending on how much you use the agents, and usage is an amalgamation of function calling, voice, the memory usage and the vector database that we're using to get all the data for some of the customer Oracle features that we're building. So it's just from a user perspective, from the customer's perspective, they see a progress bar go up because of more data coming in. They need to upgrade their plan. Right. And so that's how we're thinking about it. We want to simplify it. We don't want to innovate there. I know we had spoke earlier about some of the thoughts you had around outcome-based pricing. I'd love to hear that.
Yep. Yeah. No, this is actually, and you're in an interesting situation. I think it's a difficult balance. I'm a huge proponent of usage and mapping usage, but usage and value outcome need to be direct. It can't be this sort of indirect. So tokens is far too indirect,
Hmm.
especially for a business application, business users. So, I mean, what you're hearing is music to my ears. You've got the notion of usage, use the agents more, get more value from them. I guess my question would be, is there a unit of value somewhere in the system that, people would, successful onboards, successful milestones that are
Yes.
achieved and reached, like, can those be monetized in a manner not to go squeeze more money out of the customer, but rather in a manner where the customer actually understands, like, yeah, I'm paying X to get people to this milestone, and that has a value to me. And I'm going to pay Y to get them to, I don't know, 3 milestones later, because that's my next biggest value moment. And then I can think it doesn't run against you. Because one of the worries I have with usage under some conditions is it actually just promotes people not to use it. And the classic one is user seats, right? You put in many cases, you put a user seat model in place, and all you're really telling them is don't buy more seats. Limit your seats to just the few people who must absolutely be on the system. But there's a lot of value in just getting everybody on the system. So, it's never easy because it's very easy, like in these conversations, to paint with a very broad brush. But I'm curious, Bobby, like, have you thought, well, I'm sure you have. We've had some of these conversations, but I'd love to hear a little bit of your thinking about this concept of milestones and outcomes and how you would position that in your journey as a company.
Yeah, no, it's a very iterative process, and we're still figuring it out. Um, in the beginning, as I mentioned, we just tried to do everything based on tokens. We found that isn't very useful. It confuses the user. Now we're in a phase where we're charging a standard SaaS model. So you have your Pro, your Growth, and your Enterprise plus usage. So the usage is based on the usage of data input from the customer oracle. So the customer oracle is a an intelligence layer that the team can glean insights from through each stage of the customer journey. So as
Hmm.
data gets fed into that, someone from the success team can look at transcripts from the voice, AI voice conversations and the human voice conversations and the CRM data, and be able to glean insights from that agent, because all that had already happened at the prospect stage, at the onboarding
Right.
stage, and it's not lost. That's one of the bigger problems we found in customer discovery. So there's usage being taken up in terms of, I guess you wouldn't call it usage, you would call it storage there.
Okay.
And so there's
That
that
type of
monetization.
usage.
Yep, that's that monetized. And then the other monetized feature is going to be the amount of times your agents are actually talked to. Now, the piece there is, because we are limiting folks on the amount of agents that they can create in our pro and growth plan, there is a perverse incentive that we're still trying to tackle, and that's why this is an iterative process. Because we're saying, hey, look, in our basic plan, you get five onboarding agents. Um, we don't want that to cap usage. And we also don't want that to, like you said, give folks the impression that, okay, I'll just only create five agents, and depending on the usage costs, I'll get all my projects done there. And so it's an ebb and flow that we're still figuring out right now, but like you said, it's a very hard problem to solve in this new era of agentic business models.
I mean, I absolutely is completely agree, and I wonder. I could imagine myself as a founder and a CEO and whatnot, thinking in terms of like retention and activation. Like, okay, I would, if there was an agent that improved my retention by X, if it was an agent that improved my activation by Y, that's something that I can actually measure. I can measure the value of that because I understand the relationship of activation, retention, et cetera, the pirate metrics to my eventual conversion. And I understand it not just in the sort of, low touch side, but I also understand it on the enterprise side as I'm talking to, various size enterprises. I have those models in place. I already think about that, my funnel. I think about my stages and the distance between stages and timing. So there is certainly a baseline, but then the challenge becomes, a year later, 2 years later, when it's already in place. So now what are you comparing to? But it does seem to me that there's a huge amount of value that is stored, if you will, or locked is almost the wrong word. It's like it's encompassed by these agents and what they can actually do to your process and how much they can help. And, finding a straight line there is going to be incredibly consumable as from the business user side, as opposed to like, well, I use it more, I pay more. Is that really right? So I'm loving the fact that you're thinking of it as a journey. I'm also thinking of it as a journey. I'm also enjoying hearing many of the different sort of ideas that are coming out in the world. For example, I recently talked to a person who's thinking in terms of AI employees, and they're really kind of taking an outsourced employee mental model, but then applying it to an AI agent. I'm not sure that works for you and me, but it's certainly, I'm happy to see all these flowers blooming, to see which ones you and I can go through and say like, yeah, that looks like it would work. Let's give that a try, and try all these different methods.
I love that thought, because one customer that we piloted earlier this year, when we were focusing only on onboarding, when they were doing their implementation process required them to they'll have this large customer, and first of all, the the customer does well, I won't disclose too much, but basically their process is such that they'll have like a 5 to 6 month sales cycle, and then when a customer is onboarded, they'll bring in outside consultants from the Philippines
Hmm.
to go in, and these are humans that will talk to the customer and train them on their software, right? And so when we were focusing only on onboarding and not expanding throughout the holistic customer journey, we were like, well, hey, look, you can use our AI agents to basically replace these consultants, these human consultants, you don't have to pay by hour. You know, all of a sudden the project fee economics flip on its head. Now, instead of paying per hour, $10 per hour for these outsourced consultants to talk to your customers, now the input isn't human hour payment, but
Yeah.
compute token payment. And that's exponentially cheaper. And so you can then think about outcome-based pricing there. It's like, okay, this project costs $10,000. I have budgeted for X amount of hours for humans to come in and train my customer on my project, and usually that takes 2 months to roll out. Well, what if I had AI agents come in and run the project, or even maybe reduce the human labor in half to 50-50? Does that change the economics of my project? Does time to value decrease, right? And does the overall budget for the project, decrease? And now all of a sudden, I'm not paying humans per hour as much. I'm paying for compute, and now I'm being charged on an outcome basis because now I can, like you said, clearly see and calculate the ROI there.
Yeah, that resonates a lot with me. And I would add to that that as many of us are building products in spaces where it may be logical to maybe a proxy for it in the real world, but no one's really built software in quite that way. And so there isn't a lot of sense of where's the price point. And, if you were a new company making, milk, and you'd know that $5 a gallon is, somewhere in the range. But if you, when you're doing this, we're in a very different world. There's nothing to compare to. But now if we fast forward 2 and 3 years, we're going to see enough traffic and enough interaction that we're going to have a sense of like, okay, this is where the scaler is, and this is where it floats. So I think that also will help us orient. And I think right now is this very choppy moment where a lot of people are going back to the tokens, and that's creating, in my opinion, sort of a false grounding in value, because people are sort of looking at the token as the proxy that comes all the way through. But actually, as these systems develop, it's not just LLMs. There are many models, not just one model. The models from
Yep,
different sources. There's a lot of other
exactly.
software going on. There's a lot of other, and there's a lot of value being delivered. Why should I assume that my value is only equal to, the sum of the tokens used to generate that outcome? What about all the other? I mean, like before tokens, I still had value. Why do I only have value equal to tokens now? So I think there's a lot there to push on, but it's going to take a little. I agree with you. It's going to take a little bit of time to see it sort of work its way through, and I think the outcome is definitely a real possibility as we look at that.
Yeah. One more note to add there.
Yeah.
The wisdom in the token based pricing, I could see it's like, hey, I'm generating, X amount of compute cost from OpenAI. That is let's say it's $10,000 a month. I'm paying, OpenAI across 100 customers, $10,000 a month in compute costs. I can just tax my customers 20% on top of that, and there's my margin. And so that's sort of like you said, that's, the original thinking, and I've seen tons of players kind of use that. And so now, but there's a lot of complications. I think where the outcome-based pricing becomes really stands out is when multimodality starts to capture imagination around, hey, is this AI agent one to one with human labor? Can
Hmm.
I say, hey, a human can do this for $60 an hour, but an AI agent can do this for do the same do the same outcome, right? And so then you say, okay, the project is 10 hours. The AI agent did it in an hour. So there's value in time saved and value in the cost of labor. And now all of a sudden you can do the math around the outcome-based pricing, and it'll still likely net out cheaper or more profitable for you than if you charge on a 20% margin on your compute
Yeah.
costs. So I think
Yeah.
multimodality is gonna be the factor that turns this around. Voice is, I think, the first modality that folks are leaning towards, and vision is going to be the next, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. smell. No, I'm kidding. Probably not going to smell our agents, not too much. I love the idea that you're thinking about the human angle of this because I think that is ultimately exactly right. It's the human side that actually is going to draw us from one to the next, and voice is just almost nothing more human than to talk and communicate in that manner. And I think we're seeing these kind of come around. As you think about, people interacting with AI, what's that human skill that you think people need to really develop to thrive with all these new systems that are coming up around us?
I think, you know, the way to answer this question is sort of have to look at it. What is the skill that is sort of future proof?
Hmm.
These models will iterate by the time we talk again, and we'll be talking about 5.5 or Opus 5, and the world will be adapted to that. So I think, okay, what is the skill that's going to stand the test of time? And because I'm voice biased and because I'm a very straightforward kind of simple thinker, I think that you should just um, really rely on the skill of communicating to models, very similar to how you talk to humans. I think that's going to be the um, the way forward. So what do I mean by that? I mean, for example, we'll give you an anecdote. Uh, the work that I do with Onboard Fi has led to some other opportunities to help coach other founders in the space. And the biggest problem that I've seen folks have is uh, prompt engineering, feeling like they can't talk to models like they talk to humans. They have to, um, or they might have a question before they get to the AI piece that they need to figure out. And I tell folks, hey, look, treat this like a executive assistant. When you talk to another coworker or colleague, you don't have everything fleshed out sometimes. You conversate, you talk it through, and then you have a fleshed out sort of process, and you move forward from there. So I suspect that voice is going to get to a point where it'll pick up on the vocal cues in the conversation. Similar to humans, it'll have stronger enough reasoning to fill in the gaps to where you can talk to it, just like me and you are talking, and it'll be able to perform in those conversations. So, long story short, if you kind of uh, develop the skill to communicate with AI, similar to the way you communicate with humans, it's not a very hard skill to learn. It's more of a behavioral block I find from founders. They don't they don't think it's human, obviously, because it's not, but they need to. I think they need to do that. I think they need to
They understand it
treat it
too
like it's
well.
a human. Yeah, exactly.
Wait, so I wonder, Bobby, like, I mean, I have this conversation with my family, with others all the time, and it's literally as a human, how do we behave with agents? How do we talk to agents? And I mean, I have my opinions there. I actually think that you should exhibit the same kindness, empathy, and goodwill and grace that you would with a human. I think you should do the same thing. And also, I think that that's somewhat born out of the training, right? A lot of the training data shows good outcomes when those interactions occur, and a lot of the training data shows negative outcomes when you take other approaches. But that doesn't stop people from being curt and derogatory and forceful. I'm just kind of curious, how do you think about, like, how is that going to develop in the future? Are we going to develop a new language to talk to agents, a new manner of speaking?
I think it's still, like you said, the way we should talk to models are similar to how we talk to humans, and I think that's going to be ultimately on a long enough time horizon. I think we're going to find that non-human readable inputs are going to yield better results. We're already seeing that with like JSON, advanced JSON prompting with videos and pictures with these image generation models. But for the enterprise use cases for humanity's relationship with AI, I think, like you said, they're going to be trained in a certain way to sort of incentivize that kind of collaborative, because the on a long enough time horizon, we're going to see the movie Him play out, right? I believe. And so getting folks comfortable with talking to models in that way, I think is the future proof way to think about it, to generate the outcomes that you want.
Direct, clear, friendly. I mean,
Yep.
I think I'm with you. I think that the emotional boundary. I mean, yes, of course, the agents are not, people in the direct, most obvious sense of the word, but and I think it's actually one of the reasons why people anthropomorphize them very quickly. Like they think of them as having emotions, and they make that leap because we're kind of designed to make that leap. But I like how you're thinking about this, like learning just how to communicate and how to take the moment to put your thoughts in order in your head before you articulate them. Frankly, it's a good human skill anyway. And many times we write things down so as to slow ourselves down and be thoughtful about how we communicate, but learning to do that on the fly. There are many people who are amazing at it. I think we can all model them, and that's a good way to imagine speaking to these agents. So I love it. Bobby, thank you so much for the conversation today. We covered a lot of interesting topics. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Matt, and looking forward to chatting again.
Absolutely. Catch up again in a few months and see what's changed in the world again.
Well, hopefully we won't have AGI by then, because then it all won't matter.
Yeah, exactly. Keep pushing that one out. All right. Thank you.
All right, take care.